How to Cause Family Destruction. Alright, you've chosen to read this, so I'll give you some backstory. I am 30F. This involves my godmother 64, who I have always treated as my aunt due to her close relations with my now passed on mother. The third main person in this is her soon-to-be ex-M, 54. It's important to note that he is a retired recording engineer, music maker, and a musician, so he could make and play music. My uncle is a genius. He is a very smart man, but he doesn't make those around him feel stupid. Also to note is that he has 3 ruptured discs in his back and nerve bulging. My aunt has severe health issues and honestly, it's practically a miracle she is still alive. She has had several strokes and has more health issues than should be possible for a person to be alive. I've taken into account and made so many excuses for her regarding her behavior over the years due to her declining health and the poor childhood she had, but I have finally reached the end of my rope with the latest stunt. Due to her poor health, my aunt has sparsely worked since my mother passed, and I moved in just over 8 years ago. She formally retired in December in 22. A year and a half ago, we sold the family home and moved from a big city into a much smaller and charming city. I love living here, and the people are so much friendlier. I'd like to make it known that this makeshift family is not well off, and we are in fact quite poor. I'm long used to this as I grew up this way and I can make it work. Due to the age of the family home, location, and the fact that the neighborhood is on the verge of becoming a historical district. So why move, you might ask? The home was willed to her by her mother when she passed on, and upkeep has not been done on this house in the proper ways for probably longer than I have been alive. This house has almost reached 100 years of age. After her mother passed on, my aunt, not having the slightest clue as to what she is doing, calls the tax office and informs them of the change in ownership, and thus the tax breaks need to be changed, which is true in my home state of Texas, as I have had explained to me. I have not been a homeowner and do not claim to know how this works. Of course, all tax breaks are removed. Exemptions like first home or the like and senior citizen breaks. Thus begins the downward spiral. The tax office goes back 5 years and edits the taxes we have paid. Just like that, we are now over 40K in debt. Sadly, this isn't even the worst part. In fact, what follows makes this almost a mild disagreement. For the next 6 months or so begins a long drawn-out battle with the tax office. I still don't understand why they wouldn't go back more than 3 years when fixing our taxes, and now we are 40K in debt. It came to light during the proceedings that the tax office thought we had an additional structure on the property. Poorly taken satellite pictures also showed some kind of structure on the property. The structure hadn't been on the property for more than 10 years. What it was a large deck with stairs. It was constructed by my aunt's great-grandfather as a play area for his children, being made entirely of wood and not treating or sealed it decayed. I often played on the deck as a young child before it became too unsafe and was eventually knocked down. I have many fond memories of playing pirates and running around it with my brothers. So we take many pictures of the yard, the poor condition of the house, yada yada yada. During this time, things are becoming more and more tense in the house. My aunt has hardly worked in months, clinging to her poor health as an issue, and honestly, she was making a bigger deal of it than it was at the time. To clarify, my aunt had a work-from-home job, and she did not need to do strenuous work. Oftentimes, she would say that it was too hard to sit in her chair and do her work. So, she would leave early and return to the living room, which she had turned into her bedroom. A large bed was even in the center of the room. I wouldn't have had such a problem with this if she hadn't gone into the living room and proceeded to sit in her chair to watch television for hours. Her office chair was very comfortable and could even massage. It was pretty expensive. After I had moved into the house with her, she began to work less and less, giving me more burdens with bills and food. My aunt is also a heavy smoker. Her typical rate is 2 packs in a single day. That's right, 2 packs in a day. On a bad day when she can't sleep, she can do 4. See why I say it's a miracle she is still living. Before I got a better job, I was working 2, and for a short period of time 3. My aunt is the most controlling person on the planet, and I will die on that hill. She controlled how many hours I went to my jobs, what I am allowed to eat and drink. I am not a smoker and I rarely drink. Most of the time when I do, it's with friends, and I always limit myself to 2 or 3 cocktails. I do love margaritas. Anyways, almost a year after I got my favorite job, an Apple phone tech, I get hurt. I slip through some water in the house on a rainy day and my ankle hits the wooden frame of my uncle's keyboard, not the computer one. Yup, it's broken. Surgery is needed. My aunt is the type of person who cannot be outdone. If someone, me especially, is sick or injured, she will give about 5 minutes of concern and you are lazy, melodramatic, or my absolute favorite, a hypochondriac. If you don't know what that means, in a nutshell, basically you fear having a chronic illness. It is a mental disorder. Her favorite time to use that was when I worked food service and would come home with several of my fingers bandaged. I am a klutz of sorts and I do often injure my fingers. Anyone who has worked food service knows that if you cut yourself and it bleeds, a bandage is required. It was not unusual for me to cut 2 to 3 fingers in a shift often. Like I said, I'm a klutz. Not even 3 days after my surgery, mind you, I am barely getting around and I have to use a walker to get from place to place. I'm lazy because I'm hurting too bad to go stand on one leg and wash the dishes, or that I haven't gotten off my lazy but to make dinner. This entire time I have yet to adjust to my pain medication. Opioids make me sick and I'm okay with that. I see what it has done to my aunt. She's been on them for longer than I have been alive. She is severely addicted. Yes, her medical conditions warrant the extreme amount of pain med. I sacrificed a lot during this time and my job was one of them. My pain, lack of being able to keep food down, sufficient rest, and extreme stress forced me to resign from my job. It isn't always easy to sit down and just work. My break happened 2 years ago now, 2 days before Halloween. My surgery was in early November and I resigned from my job in December. I did not go back to work until March of the next year for several reasons. During this time, I pushed myself to start walking before I was supposed to. I was not able to attend physical therapy, which I pay for now. And we sold the family home and moved to new 3-bed, 1-bath house that mainly has cosmetic damage but is totally fixable. We had a lot of complications during the move, and it cost a lot more than was initially planned. My aunt's fifth major negative health nosedive occurred in April. She has a fall and splinters her hip and tailbone, as well as her middle finger on her left hand. By this time, we have managed to remove the kitchen and knock the walls down. It was quite a learning experience for me putting in insulation. I absolutely loathe the fiberglass stuff, and then putting in the new drywall, mudding, and then putting the orange peel-like appearance most if not all people are familiar with in more modern homes. My aunt spends about 2 weeks in the hospital, and they wanted to move her into inpatient care to make sure her bones heal. She tolerated that for another week before bullying her way out. I'm sure it will be no surprise to anyone that my aunt is the nightmare patient. If she calls nurses for something and they don't instantly appear, she is angry. I honestly hated going to the hospital for, or with her because of her behavior. She has embarrassed me on more occasions than I care to count. She doesn't look the part at all. Medium-length graying hair, tattoos all over her body, and a very unique but very her sense of style. She loves hairy boots and her go-to brand is Bare Paws. But that's not relevant. My aunt without a doubt the biggest Karen. She is that, get me your manager person when things don't go her way. She has pulled that with my co-workers in restaurants and fast food places. So now my uncle and I are doing the round-the-clock care. In a very insufficient place, she was receiving at the inpatient. Anyone who has a relative that needs to use a wheelchair understands how difficult it is to navigate one in cramped, or now wheelchair-friendly places. So now I am hardly getting any sleep despite the fact that I work 130+ hours. I have never been against providing my aunt care, but I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse and I have no medical training to speak of. The only reason I was against her leaving their care was because the doctors were not ready to release her. She couldn't really do things herself, and that is the things they should be doing. I am not capable of taking care of her in the manner that she desperately needed. I hope I have made this clear. I never minded helping, but I was not adequate to provide her needed care. So in the following weeks, I'm averaging 2 hours of sleep a night, working like a madwoman, trying to keep the bills all paid. Finally, it comes that she is up on her feet and able to do things on her own. Things are not going well at my job. I am not used to being on my feet for such long periods of time, and I constantly work doubles. I'm on the verge of collapse when I finally have enough and quit. I will not burn myself down at a place I am not appreciated. I sleep for about 16 hours and then go job hunting. My aunt blames me for quitting and being lazy because things aren't done at home. The kitchen isn't finished. Bonus, it's still not done. My chores are behind. I am responsible for everything. She has 2 dogs Chihuahuas that she doesn't take care of. They are never corrected for bad behaviors. You left something on the floor like a pair of shoes and the younger one took them and chewed them. Not the dog's fault. It shouldn't have been on the floor. He steals dirty socks out of your laundry basket. Not his fault. Shouldn't have been on the floor. It was so bad that I had to pick my cat's litter box and food bowl up off the floor to make sure her litter box was not a toy and her food remained hers. This is still not the worst thing. I will make it known that my aunt has had 3 strokes and she is not right in the head. Her last stroke really devastated her thinking. She has accused me of sneaking around with my uncle and accused the both of us of having an affair many times. I have not, will not, and never will have an intimate relationship with him. My uncle is the closest thing I've ever had to a dad and I value that. I never want to lose it. My aunt is a very vocal person and has voiced this declaration to her entire family. Her son, who doesn't really care, her daughter, who now thinks I'm a homewrecker and a slut, on top of a lazy, abusive person. Over the weeks, our relationship deteriorates and now doesn't exist. She has tried to evict me from the house, despite the fact that I'm the only one who works and paying all the bills, including supplying her ridiculous smoke needs. I am not allowed to eat food at home, and I am absolutely forbidden from getting food at work. I cannot have the drinks that I like, Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. She tries to pour them out, that I bought with my money, not her food stamps. I spend too much time in my room. I come out of my room. She made the living room her bedroom again. Late at night because I need something. A drink, some Tylenol because I have a headache, such and such. One thing to note is that I do not like to hear my own footsteps. It drives me nuts. I know that's a weird quirk, but I'm okay with that. I don't make a noise when I walk through my home, except when I wear heels, which I wasn't. She has yelled at me for waking her up on several occasions when I go to the kitchen, despite being already awake. I check every time so I know if I need to be extra quiet. For some reason, despite me being the one to leave the house the most, her dogs bark at me every time I enter and exit the front door if I'm the only one to do so. They do not bark at my aunt or uncle and I can't understand why. I have only legitimately woken her once, and that was because I had to go to the car to get my phone. It was late, but I hadn't even been home from work all that long. My aunt has escalated things to ridiculous heights. In early August, she moved out of the house and into her nephew's home. Thankfully, she took her dogs with her. I don't hate dogs in general, but I admit to hating hers. She has tried to sell the house out from under us by claiming that she is a single woman and that she bought this house with her inheritance money. Neither of these things is true. Her inheritance was the family home, which she sold, and there is such a thing as community property. She's been planning on this for a while. She filled out the deed to the house as a single woman. She had 2 investors look at her house and agreed to sell it for $30,000 on the pretense that $27,000 worth of work was needed on the pipes. That is not true. The previous owner had new pipes run 2 years before she moved out. My uncle put a stop to that sale because the contract was not legal, being that it did not have his signature on it. The house is half his, as is the car that she cannot drive on the count that she can't read and her vision is failing her. All due to that stroke last year. She has pretty good speech and yells perfectly fine. Angry makes her slight slur disappear. Maybe that's why she wants to remain in an angry state all the time. My uncle and I want to live in the house, but in order to do so my aunt is demanding $35,000 for the house, which is more than its current value. When we first moved here, she made a deal with me that I would only have to pay on all the bills until she got her SSI. Well, she has reneged on that more times than I have fingers to count even if you put my entire extended family together. Her first grand idea was to kick me out the day she got it and dump me in an apartment. That was never the plan. I have been waiting all this time to go back to school. This was the agreement. I take care of things for now, and then when she gets it I cut down to 1/3 of the bills and I can start saving money for a car of my own and go to school. She thinks that I can get an apartment for $400 a month, work enough to pay my bills and go to school, both of which I would have to do full-time. I've looked in my city. There is no apartment under $800 and most are not all bills paid. She suggested I get loans. My credit is tanked, thanks to medical bills. No one is going to loan to me. My portion of the surgery I needed was over $30,000, and that doesn't even include the numerous DR's visits post-surgery. She has tried to evict me despite no longer living in the house and not wanting it. She sent messages every day to my uncle asking about money because she hasn't stopped smoking and won't. Her SSI is due to come in December. Who needs over 30K for just a few months? I can't fathom it. I just want to get the loan, try to give her the little more than 17.5K that would be her half of the house. She said she didn't want the car, a Chrysler 300, and that it was junk or too expensive. Neither is true. The car just needs new tires, which I have, but haven't been able to spare the cash to get them on. It also needs the 100,000-mile maintenance things that all cars require. If sold, they'd both walk away with less than 5K. She wants a car but cannot drive. I shudder to think of her behind the wheel. This is basically what I've dealt with in the last 2 months, not counting the mess I've dealt with for years. Many times she has tried to tell me that I am a poor daughter and that my mother would be so disappointed in me. She knows how to hit me where it hurts. I love my mother with all my heart. I treasure the time I got to spend with her and often wish it was more. She knows one of my goals is to stand in front of her again and tell her I lived in the best way I could with the hand I had to play.